Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Kanji FPL and we are back with another YouTube video. Let's jump right back into my Game Week 5 review. Game Week 5 was a horror show. There was blood on the streets for most of the FPL engaged community. Personally, I went from 95k to 160k, so a massive red arrow just like everyone else. But there are some silver linings. I've got to be thankful that in Game Week 3, I did make the move to go from Watkins to Julian Alvarez when most people were going to Nicholas Jackson. And I got to be thankful with that move because I got to give myself a pat on the back because everyone is moving to Julian Alvarez now, and I ended up making that move earlier, so it kind of saves me that transfer. I avoided that move to Nicholas Jackson. I mean, Nicholas Jackson has just been so inconsistent. His conversion rate is so low. It's just a joke. Like, this guy just isn't ready for the Premier League. I just think this is the risk when you go and bring in FPL assets from teams that are rebuilding and bring in players that are new to the Premier League. Like, things like this can happen. And obviously this is like the perfect scenario for me. This is the reason that I've been having a lot of green arrows, because I bet against the template with Nicholas Jackson and going with Alvarez, but that is no longer going to be the case. Julian Alvarez is the most transferred in player so far this week, and he's going to be part of the new template in FPL. And it does make a lot of logical sense. He's on all the corners, all the free kicks. We saw in the Champions League he scored 2 goals. One of them was off of a free kick. And I just think at his price point of 6.8, it's a joke. You're essentially replacing KDB's role in Man City with Julian Alvarez. I know he's playing reverse out of position, where he's a forward that's playing in midfield, but I don't think that matters too much if you're playing for Manchester City. The main thing is that, are you getting the minutes? And Alvarez has them on lock. He creates a lot of chances, and because he's providing to a finisher like Erling Haaland, who's elite, it's like those half chances and half assists will be full assists because they're going to Erling Haaland. So it's a great start to the season for Julian Alvarez, and honestly, I just think it'll continue to be great because I believe in the quality of the player, and I don't think the minutes are really up for grabs, especially given the KDB injury, given that Gundogan's out. Bernardo just got an injury. I know Grealish is back now, but I just think Foden is a great option as well. I just think Alvarez is just the one for me, and I'm glad that the engaged community is moving towards there, and I'm happy I made that move earlier. Erling Haaland has been so consistent so far this season. Honestly, he should be in the Ballon d'Or conversation. Like, he's him. Like, you can literally just set and forget him as a captain option. I mean, if you're looking for a low risk way to play FPL, I think you can just genuinely captain Haaland every single week. I think his effective ownership will be at least 120% in every week. That's just the minimum that I'm expecting him to be at. And if you want to just enjoy his points and you think he's the best player in the league, which I believe he is, you can just captain him every week. But that's pretty boring. I'm not sure if that's exactly how I want to play FPL, specifically when there are proven FPL assets with good fixtures that can rival Erling Haaland. I mean, like, if you decided to make a move like that, you'd probably finish in the top 500k with your eyes closed. But if you want to go out there and win FPL, you can't make moves like that because you're just going to be stuck with the pack. So there's going to be moments and opportunities to bet against Haaland, and I do think I won't take advantage, but it just feels like this wasn't the week because Haaland ended up going out there and put up an XGI of 2.0. And usually if that happens, he's scoring 3 goals because he's an elite finisher. So those of you that did go against Haaland for captaincy and Captain Son, you should count your lucky stars, man. Because he could have got a hat trick. Like, you're lucky that he only got 1 goal. So it should send like a shiver down your spine if you're planning to go against him for captaincy or even sell him in the future. So it's something I'm going to keep in mind going forward. But man, Haaland is as consistent as can be. No surprises here. Moving on, we've got James Maddison. He was a player that I brought in Game Week 4. He got me a goal. He's now got me a blank. It is what it is. Like, I think he's a great FPL pick. He does have 2 hard games coming up against Arsenal and Liverpool, but he has 2 easy games after that in Fulham and Luton. So I'm not worried about James Maddison. I think he's great in terms of getting coverage of Heung-min Son, and he could potentially be a captain option in Game Week 8 or Game Week 9. A lot of people did captain Son as the main captaincy rival against Haaland, but Maddison did get some captaincy shouts, and I can totally understand that. He's been so consistent. He actually got more minutes than Son. I know Son would potentially be on the penalties, but Maddison is on the free kick, so he is a potential captaincy contender for me in Game Week 8 and Game Week 9. So that's just something I want to think about. But moving on, again, like, Saka is just so consistent. They're just too underpriced this year again. Like, Odegaard and Saka are just such great FPL picks. Like, if you saw their game in the Champions League, Arsenal they're too good. Like, I actually looked and saw the odds for Arsenal. They're actually like one of the favorites to win the Champions League. I was pretty surprised about that, but I don't think they're going to go out there and win the Champions League at all. But I do think that they have a really good chance at just being in the top four again, building on last season's success, and maybe challenging Man City, especially given that KDB's out. So I don't think I ever want to sell Saka. I think he's really an asset that should have been priced at 10.0, and I want to just enjoy his points this season. I don't really want to worry about it. I think I just want to hold him all season. So happy that he ticked over. I'm not surprised at all. He did have an XGI of less than 1.0, but he still got the assist. That's just what Saka does, man. Like, he defies what XGI is. He's just that good. Moving on, we got Brian and Bumo. He's been pretty consistent so far this season, but he came up against a stubborn Newcastle defense. Brentford didn't even put up an XGI of over 1 in this game. So it just shows you how strong Newcastle defense is. And Bumo's blanking, and it is what it is. Like, again, he's a 6.5 million asset. I don't expect him to return every week. He's on penalties, and he's definitely going to be given the next 2 games for me. Everton at home and Nottingham Forest. I'm hoping for at least 1 return in the next 2 games, so I'm not worried about him. The players I am worried about are Bruno and Rashford. I cannot believe how poor this season has gone for these two. Like, continues to be poor. Even in the Champions League, they did go out there and they lost to Bayern Munich. I knew they were going to lose, but they ended up scoring 3 goals, so that's a green light for me to potentially keep these guys in my FPL team. There is a world where Man United can be a bad team and Bruno and Rashford can still be good FPL picks. So I do want to make sure I am separating the team bias, and I just want to see how things go. This Burnley game is going to be massive for how I'm going to plan out the rest of my season. But again, to blank against Brighton, I really did feel like this was Rashford's opportunity to attack on the counter. I mean, who was going to be out there to stop him on that side? Was it going to be James Milner, Joe Veltman? Like, Caicedo was gone. I really expected Rashford to get something in this game, but he disappointed me, man. Bruno, I knew he would be sitting deep in this game, so I knew this wasn't a Bruno game. I'm not worried about it, but I just think there are a lot of good fixtures coming up for Man United, so I'm tempted to just be patient and see how things evolve. Let's see. Moving on to my defense, Saliba, he's been so consistent. The problem with Saliba, it's not him. It's like his role in the team. Because I think about Gabriel, he has the attacking threat off the set pieces. I think about Zinchenko, he's playing in midfield. So he always has higher like goal threat, or sorry, XGI threat, because he'll be playing incisive through balls to the strikers. And on top of that, you got Ben White, who has the overlapping runs from defense. So Saliba is kind of like the worst pick, I think, from the Arsenal defense. But I did go for him, and I just think at this point he's somebody that I could look to move on. Just given the fact that Arsenal's fixtures do toughen up. They are playing Newcastle, Chelsea, and Man City in the next 4 games. Next, we've got my differentials. We got Turner, Annette, and Konza. Both of them were my differentials this week. Like Turner, like a lot of the engaged community had him at 4.0 when they started the season, so they plan to just play him this week. I was expecting at least 3 saves. Like, I wanted 3 FPL points at least. He made some good saves, but he only made 2 of them. I thought he would have had more shot-saving opportunities, but it just shows you how good Nottingham Forest defense actually is. They didn't concede an XG over 1.0, so they should have kept a clean sheet, but that's how football is. It was just negative variance again when I'm starting Turner, but I'll be there again when they play Luton. I just hope that Turner's still the starting goalie at that time. And next, Konza, Aston Villa. I just think they're such a solid team. And I know Konza blanked this week, but I have faith in him to just prove me right over a larger period of time. I've only played him twice this year and he's blanked both times, but I do have faith in Aston Villa. I trust Unai Emery over most of the other managers in the league, and I think Konza at 4.5 is great. I think Matty Cash at 4.7 is probably a better asset, but I'm not sure it's worth a transfer to just switch that up. If I was on wildcard, I'd be looking at Matty Cash over Konza for sure. And lastly, Chilwell. This is like the biggest talking point of this week. Like, Chilwell is probably Chelsea's best player, given the fact that Reece James is injured. I don't know why Pochettino was benching him. It doesn't make any sense to me. He played Mykhailo Mudryk over him. Mudryk hasn't done anything since he's been at Chelsea. Even over international break, he did absolutely nothing. And when he played against Bournemouth, he didn't do anything again. Like, I don't know why Pochettino continues to play Mudryk in any games, especially at the expense of an England international in Ben Chilwell. Doesn't make any sense to me. But I am in this luxurious position where when I look at my team next week, I have Estupiñán, who could start next week because he's playing against Bournemouth. I have Botman, who I would start next week because he's playing against Sheffield. And so my big decision this week is whether I get rid of Saliba or Chilwell for Trippier this week. And that's kind of where my mind is, right? Lastly, my game week 4 move on the deadline was actually to do Johnston to Areola. I didn't even start Areola, but I just think at his price, they've just really made a mistake in FPL, because last season, West Ham, what they did is they played Fabianski in all the Premier League games and they played Areola in all the Europa Conference League games. But that's actually switched. Like in the Europa League, they started Fabianski, and in all the Premier League games, they've started Areola. And I think David Moyes is just that stubborn of a manager that he's consistent with it, regardless of when the fixtures are, even during fixture congestion. The Champions League keeper, sorry, the Europa League keeper is the Europa League keeper, and the Premier League keeper is the Premier League keeper. And that stubbornness from a guy like David Moyes is just very predictable. And so I'm just glad that we were able to get onto an Areola as an asset at 4.1. Solid asset. The reason why I did make that move this week, and I know it's not good to make a move on a goalkeeper transfer, there's so many more transfers that have higher upside. It was more of just like a downside protection move, because when I thought of Turner, he just had a kid like 2 or 3 days before the game. And there also is that new keeper that they signed from, I think it was Olympiacos or Benfica or something, where he was a starting keeper there. So that guy could have just been the starting keeper in this game, and then I would have been stuck with Johnston starting. But he also has Dean Henderson that's come from Manchester United, and I'm not sure at some point if Johnston's going to get rotated for Dean Henderson. So I'm just sort of protecting myself in advance. Pretty boring move. It's unfortunate that I had to make a transfer like that to waste it, but it is what it is. Areola actually outscored Turner to just pour salt into the wound, but it is what it is. I'm glad to like have Areola like long term. And again, having somebody like Botman when I started the season, and again having Areola, having somebody like Konza, these are players that allow me to just hold my wild card till much later, while other people are looking to use it even this week or in game week 8 or game week 10. So I'm glad with where my team is looking right now. But my big decision this week, I've already mentioned it, it's going to be bringing in a second Newcastle defender. When I look at the minutes per expected goal conceded for all the teams so far in the league, Manchester City is right at the top. Arsenal are in second, Newcastle are in fourth. That's not surprising at all. That's kind of what I expected, but Chelsea was in there. I was like, what is going on? I knew Chelsea had some solid fixtures, so that does make sense. But then when I think about it, I'm like, Newcastle had really tough fixtures this year. They played Brighton, they played Man City, they played Liverpool, they played Aston Villa. You would have expected those teams to score and create a lot of chances, right? But it just shows you how great Newcastle's defense is. And it really just gives me that positive confirmation that Newcastle's defense is elite. The only reason you would want to go against Trippier is if you want to get to a setup where you need more money in your team, where it's like you need more money in your midfield to afford something like Holland plus Salah. And that's kind of the only reason you would probably go against Trippier. But I think in isolation, I think Trippier is the best defender in the game. When the season is over, I think he'll end it with being at least in the top 5 for points from defenders. And I think whenever Newcastle get a clean sheet, he doesn't just pick up 6 points. He always ends up with 8 or 9 because he's creating so many chances for the team. He's really high on the bonus points. And he's just a really solid FPL pick. It's like you can kind of set him and forget him, given the fact that so many of the tough fixtures are already out of the way. Right? So I'm like, okay, since I've already made my mind up where I'm going to bring Trippier in, the next decision in my mind is, am I going to sell Saliba or Chilwell to afford that? And for me, it just comes down to who has a better defense. Arsenal have the better defense because you can see that they're just, 30% better than what Chelsea are, but Chilwell has more attacking threat than Saliba. So that's kind of where I'm stuck, because I know that I only really care about who's going to get the points in game week 7 and game week 8, because in game week 6, I have a Estupiñán playing Bournemouth, and I'll have Botman playing Sheffield United. And because I'll be bringing Trippier in, I'll start him as well. So I don't really care who the Arsenal defender or Chelsea defender play in game week 6. I'm only worried about how they are in game week 7 and game week 8. And this is the luxury that I have. Like, I do have this luxury to bench Ben Chilwell if I choose to keep him. And most people are not in this position. If they have Chilwell, they probably have to play him this week. And honestly, I think Chilwell will start this week. I do feel like he is high in the pecking order. In preseason, he was on all of the set pieces. I just think he's so important to the team, especially given the fact that Reece James is gone. Like, I just think you played McCallum Mudryk. They were terrible. They didn't even score a goal. And honestly, when Ben Chilwell subbed on, he created a big chance for Nicholas Jackson, like right away. Went right to the byline, using that left foot, crosses it in right up to Nicholas Jackson's head, but he heads it right to the goalie. And that's the thing with this team, is like when you look at the offense, it's like, Chelsea have created a lot of chances, like created an XG of 6.7, but only scored 5 goals. And I don't think that has anything to do with Ben Chilwell. I think that has more to do with Nicholas Jackson. So I do trust Ben Chilwell. And so when I think about it, I'm like, okay, Saliba probably has a higher floor, where I think against Bournemouth he's going to get the clean, so that's probably going to be 6, and against Man City he'll probably concede 2. So that's probably 7 points over game week 7 and game week 8. And when I look at Ben Chilwell, Chilwell could have 2 points. Like, he could get a 1 and a 1, but Chilwell could also get a start, get a clean sheet, get an attacking return. I just think the upside is so massive in both games. It's not just one opportunity for that. Both opportunities that could happen. So I feel like I want to live my life with the least regret. Like, am I going to regret if Saliba goes out there and gets a clean sheet and I miss out on 4 points? I don't think so. That's not the way that I want to play. I want to play with getting the most upside. And so I actually opted to sell Saliba. I know it sounds weird, and Chilwell just got dropped. Like, he didn't even get a start last week, and I'm still going to keep him. It doesn't really make sense from that perspective, but if you know ball, you just know Chilwell is good enough to be starting every single game for almost any Premier League team. So I'm just going to keep the faith in the quality of the player and hope that it works out, especially given the fact that he's the captain now. So let's see how it goes. I'm hoping this doesn't come back to bite me. Moving on, I did want to talk just on 2 talking points that are really big in my mind. The first thing is going to be Liverpool's consistency in attack. They've been scoring a lot of goals and even picking up good results. Last week, they played without Virgil van Dijk and without Trent Alexander-Arnold. Last season, if that happened, we probably would have lost, but we went out there and still won the game. But it was a tale of 2 halves. Like, in the first half, Wolves really were the better team, but that's what Liverpool do. Over the 30-40 minute spell after halftime, we dominated them and scored 3 goals just like that. Like, that's how great of a team Liverpool can be when they're on it. And I'm really having flashbacks to where Liverpool were 2 years ago when I'm watching us. Like, wow, I know we don't have Firmino and Mane, but Nunez is solid. Gakpo, Jota, Diaz. We have so many great attacking assets, but that's the thing. There's so much rotation risk. Like, you can't really trust anyone to start except for Szoboszlai, McAllister. You can trust them, but I don't know who else would start apart from the King. So going forward, I do think that Mo is going to be essential. If you're on wildcard, I would suggest that you bring Mo into your team like ASCP. Go make sure you find a way to bring him in, because in the last 11 games in the Premier League, he's had either a goal or an assist. Like, that's how great Mo Salah is. He's consistent. You can trust him with the captaincy, given his consistency. He may not have the ceiling that Haaland does, but he'll be able to tick along. And I think that's all you really want from your captain, I think. Manchester United are absolutely hopeless. It's a sell, isn't it? I just don't know what's going on. They went out there against Bayern, and they were definitely the second best team in the Champions League. They went out there against Brighton, and they were honestly embarrassing as a team. They're so disconnected. It's a joke. But there is a world where Manchester United can play poorly, but Bruno and Rashford can be good FPL picks. When I think about it from a statistics perspective, they've created the same amount of XG as Arsenal. Like, that's how great their attack has been. They've been pretty consistent. The only difference is that United have only scored 6 goals from that same XG, and Arsenal have scored 9 goals from that XG. And that's the difference. And that's the same story that was happening last year. Like, Arsenal were overperforming their XG, and Man United were underperforming their XG. I was expecting that Rasmus Højlund would come into the team and he would help them overperform in their XG, but he hasn't. He hasn't been getting that many minutes either. I know that'll change over the next couple of weeks because he's going to be earning his place in the squad. He's better than any other striker at the club, so I know he's definitely the number 1 option. So I'm assuming that'll change in the weeks to come. And even the fixtures, they're just so gorgeous. Like, think about it. Like, Burnley's a newly promoted team. Sheffield, newly promoted team. Fulham, Luton, and Everton are really poor. And you're only really worried about this Man City game. That's obviously a deep red. That makes sense, especially given the way that Man United are playing. But Crystal Palace and Brentford, those are tough games, but they're both at home. You got to back Man United to score some goals, wouldn't you? And I just think about it. It reminds me of where Saka was last season. If you can remember, last season, Martinelli and Jesus had really high effective ownership because they were cheap. Like, Jesus was 8.0, Martinelli was 6.5. And so why would you have gone for Saka when you had Martinelli at 6.5, right? But Saka is just so consistent. And I remember jumping on him, I think this was after the World Cup, and just getting his points when no one owned him. Like, a 10% owned Saka. Like, can you imagine? Like, think about the seasons past. Like, Bruno has been one of the best FPL picks in the entire season, putting up 250 points. And to think that his effective ownership is around 15 or 20%, it's actually a joke. Like, imagine Rashford and Bruno at 40% over these fixtures. Like, it's just... I just find it so difficult to sell them. And I trust them as proven FPL picks, but right now they've been so disappointing. Like, honestly, so disappointing. Like, I understand why people are selling them. Sometimes people knee jerk, but just from watching Man United play, they're not playing well, bro. And it's going to be a tough sell to sell somebody like Holland to keep players like Rashford and Bruno. But I do have faith in them. And the really key thing is they do have Burnley and Crystal Palace before I need to make my move. I am going to roll my transfer in Game Week 7 if I don't get any injuries because I want to make my big move in Game Week 8. And I'm thinking that, hey, I'm going to give my Man United mids Burnley away. Like, you have to go out there and score 3 goals. Go prove to me that you guys can go and beat teams that you should be beating. Because if you're not doing that, then I can't afford to keep you guys in my team. And I'll move to players like Diaby or Gibbs White or Eze or Matoma because even though they're cheaper, they're solid picks, and it'll just allow me to have Salah plus Holland. So like Salah plus Holland is just elite, right? So it is what it is. I'm really torn between which way I want to go, but I'm just gonna keep my eye on the Manchester United mids. If they don't score 3 goals, I'm gonna have to sell them, but it's gonna be pretty reluctant. Moving on to my Game Week 6 preview. Again, I already went through this transfer. I made that move of Saliba to Trippier. I only have 0.9 in the bank, and I don't have any more free transfers. I've been pretty lucky where my team hasn't had any injuries, and that's how it is in FPL. Like, when you get lucky, things just kind of go your way. Like, I've been getting lucky with the Alvarez move over Jackson, and I haven't had any injuries. I can count my lucky stars for that. And it's been a really solid start, but when I look at my team this week, Trippier and Botman versus Sheffield is really strong. Like, that's the exact way I wanted this week to look like when I started my planning in preseason. I wanted to have these two for Game Week 6. I just think I can feast on these Newcastle points. And I also have a Stupinian versus Bournemouth at home. Like, he's really a bred-in attacker, So I know he was benched last week, but that was because of the travel he had because he was playing in the international games. He's pretty much nailed in the bred in 11. My goalkeeper position is kind of not that great, but how many points are you getting from your FPL keeper? Not that much, right? And that's why I really decided to just go cheap. Like, I'm going to go Areola at 4.1. I'm going to go Turner at 4.0. I trust West Ham's defense. Like, what they do is they sit deep and the keeper gets a lot of saves because the other team's going to be taking a lot of shots from outside the box. I think against Man City, I think Areola had like 9 or 10 saves. Like, it was ridiculous. He ended up with like 4 FPL points, but even though he conceded 3 goals. So it just shows you how strong Areola can be as an asset. And I just think you don't have to worry about it. Like, West Ham are solid. They'll probably end the season with at least 10 clean sheets. Like, you don't have to worry about it. And I really like the way my back four looks. Then moving on to my midfield, Madison and Saka playing against each other. Like, I'm hoping for goals in that game. I'm hoping that Madison can just match what Son is going to put out. And I'm hoping that, Saka is going to go out there and just be himself. You don't have to do too much. Next, we've got Mbumo. He's playing as Everton. I know he blanked last week, but I have faith in Mbumo. He's really consistent. The only issue I have with Mbumo is that Rico Henry got injured. And does that mean that if Brentford go to a 5-3-2 formation, does that mean that Mbumo will move to right wing back? That's something I want to monitor, but I think Mbumo is just too good and too important for this team to be playing deeper. So I think we're going to be good there. I'm definitely going to hold him for Everton and Nottingham Forest, but after that, he's definitely going to be a player on the chopping block. Next, we've got Rashford and Fernandes. Like, these guys need to score in this game. Like, this is the money game, boys. Like, I felt this exact same way when they played Nottingham Forest earlier in the season, and they did the business. So I'm really hoping they do the business again. But let's see. Let's see how things go. And then lastly, I've got my Man City strikers. I've got Julian Alvarez and Erling Haaland. It sucks that Alvarez is not going to be a differential anymore. It's a little bit disheartening. But listen, I've enjoyed your points, and you've saved me a transfer. So thank you so much, Alvarez. And Haaland, go do your thing, bro. He'll probably end up with like 2 goals and an assist, and none of us really bat an eye. It's like typical. The players on my watch list going forward are going to be all of the Liverpool players. I mentioned earlier that I'm looking to move on Chilwell to either like Trent or Robertson, Van Dijk, or Konate in Game Week 9. And so I'm also scouting players like Luis Diaz and Diogo Jota and Darwin Núñez. They're all on my radar. Liverpool's fixtures are gorgeous. I would love to have a triple up. I just don't know like who are the right players to bring in. The only one that I know I can trust right now is going to be Mo Salah. So I'm definitely going to bring him in at some point. I also have Heung-min Son on my radar. I've got the Aston Villa players on my radar as well, like Matty Cash at 4.7, Diaby at 6.6, and Watkins at 7.9. I think they're all really good assets, and their fixture run is going to be great soon. Currently, I'm sitting at 160k, and I'm honestly pretty thankful to be sitting at this rank at the end of Game Week 5. If you made it to this moment in the video, you're a real one. Thank you so much for your support. I'm currently at 43 subscribers, trying to make my way to the big 50. That'll be a huge milestone for me. So if I provided some value to you, please drop a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all again soon. Peace.